Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lion's Den. And this is a special series we are producing called Blue Collar Ballers. Today we speak with Angie Simon, who is the founder of a nonprofit called Heavy Metal Summer Experience, which trains young people, high schoolers, in the construction trades, specifically ones involving heavy metal. And she's started this basically in order to get more kids into the trades, into construction, where we have such a labor shortage as we're all aware of. But this is a wide ranging conversation. We talk a lot about Angie's time at a company called Western Allied Mechanical, which is where she worked prior to this nonprofit. And she worked at Western Allied Mechanical for 35 years, worked her way up from a entry level position all the way to becoming the president of the organization. Pretty incredible and a really cool path for young people who want to go into the construction trades. So she's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of cool stuff to share. Check this conversation out. So Angie, thank you for joining the Lion's Den, part of a series that we're producing now that I think we're going to try to call Blue Collar Ballers is what we're going for. So it's yeah, construction trade, heavy metal, industrial, all that kind of work. We're talking to entrepreneurs in that field. And so glad to have you on. I want to start first with Western Allied Mechanical. I was on your LinkedIn page. You were there for a very long time, 35 years. So what work did you all do there?
So Western Allied Mechanical was a full mechanical contracting firm in the San Francisco Bay Area. We did primarily design build mechanical contracting. So I'm a mechanical engineer by college degree and started Western Allied 1 year out of college. Okay. And I mostly was a project manager as I came up through the ranks. But we would design our own jobs and then install them. So we were a union contractor with unionized sheet metal and pipe fitters at Western Allied.
Okay. And so what would be like an example of a project?
So we were very specialized in life sciences and biotech, as well as kind of green buildings. So I did a lot of life sciences. And if you think about it, in a lab building, a lot of exhaust, a lot of fume hoods, a lot of clean rooms. And the mechanical is a big part of that because we provide the air in and we take the air out. We also design the clean rooms, so we make sure the air is properly filtered and clean. So we would design those systems. I also am proud of a job we did in Los Altos was a net zero building for the Packard Foundation's headquarters. And so basically real green buildings too, where we actually work with them and try to design very, 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 very energy efficient buildings. So that's kind of the things we did. We were commercial, not residential, and did very little retail type of thing. We were usually more the sophisticated and a little more complicated projects.
Okay, got it. And so you said you came in right out of college. So what was that like? So you were a project manager right out of college. How big was the company at that time?
Right out of college, so would have been, and I'm going to date myself, but the late 80s. And we were probably doing about 20 million at that time, if that, maybe not quite that much. And I came in as a project manager and just kind of grew up in the company. Of course, I had those forks in the road where I could make a decision of, do I want to stay or go? But I really liked the people I worked with. I loved the work I was doing, and it was a good company. And, what's interesting is I never felt not included at that company, being that there wasn't many women in the industry. And I would go out to the field and I would go to my job meetings and my design meetings, and I would be the only woman in the room. But at Western Allied, I always felt like I belonged. So later on, I grew up through that. I became a project exec and a partner. And then eventually in 2008, I became their president.
Wow. So, okay. And so if we're talking about like the C-suite, so you were the president, was there also a CEO?
No, we've never had a CEO at that time. So what happened with us, it was just president, vice presidents, and secretaries and treasurers. And my boss at the beginning, and then my partner, as I came through and became a partner, he was ready to retire and getting close. So I was actually the person they chose to be president, and in 2008. And great time to become president. Start of the recession.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were doing at that time about 40 million. Well, I think we had done 50 million the prior year, but then during the start of the recession, we did about 40 million. And then when I retired in 2021, we were up to about 125 million. So we had nice growth. Made it through the recession, and I learned a lot about being the boss. And by the time I retired, we had about 350 employees.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I have a ton of questions. First of all, let's maybe start with the like the employee side of things. Okay, so you started at the bottom, basically entry
Mhm.
level. You went all the way up to the top, and I think part of what's going to be interesting in this conversation, I think we'll talk a lot about young people coming out of college and should they pursue a career in the trades. And so this is a clear example of like a path where you can join a company at entry level and work your way all the way up. What was like the secret? I know there's no secret, but I mean, what were the things that you really had to learn and really had to focus on in order to continuously progress?
Well, it's funny, Nico, because I never had any desire to be own part of a company and then be a president of a company. That just wasn't in my DNA. I don't know. Didn't have that vision. But as I was growing up, as I was growing up in the company, I just loved to work at it. I worked hard and I did well. And I think construction still is a relationship business, and I built really solid relationships. It is a little easier when you're the only one in the room because everybody remembers you. So they all remembered me. So my relationships built were pretty strong. But I think as we got there, I think I was a little surprised when I got to be the person they picked, but I was our number one salesperson, and I was also very, very comfortable with managing people. I've always learned that, but I will say that one of the things we do not enough. I mean, one of the things we do as people start to grow into their jobs, we do move them up, but we don't give them leadership training. And I would say I got lucky. I was very involved in the Sheet Metal and Air Conditioning Contractors National Association, SMACNA. They are our arm to help us negotiate with the union, but they also do a ton of educational stuff. And for Western Allied, I was our rep for them, and I took a lot of leadership classes and helping, learning about how to deal with conflict resolution. How do you deal with things like that? And then also just the financial side of things is the other thing I think you had to learn a lot of. I should have probably had an MBA. I've got my mechanical engineering degree, but an MBA would have been helpful, but I married one. So I would just go home at night and say, hey, help me read this financial statement. I don't understand this. And I would show him everything. And I would say, if anything, my husband was a big help for me as I went into the presidency to help to understand the full financial side of a business. So between the classes on leadership, the classes on succession, and how to work on not just in the business, but on the business, and then the financial side with an MBA husband was really great. So,
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So sort of the roadmap for people to rise all the way up in a company is sort of to learn all the different areas of the company, right? So
yes.
you learn how to be a good manager, you learn how to be a good leader, you learn the financials so that you can speak intelligently about that. You also mentioned you were the top salesperson. So at what point were you supposed to be bringing in revenue on that journey?
Well, actually, after I became a senior project manager, then they made you kind of start bringing in revenue as a senior project manager, particularly in a design build company. But then I became a project exec, and that's when you're given a quota. You're expected to bring in revenue, and you're expected to run your project team. So that's the first step of where you learn to kind of talk and teach people underneath you that. And I shouldn't say underneath you, but your team, that you would start to teach them how to run projects, and then you're bringing the relationships and selling. And that continued on even with the way we were set up at Western Allied. Is even as president and running the entire company, and even when we're very large, I still had sold a huge part of my quota. So I continued to sell, which I enjoyed that part. That to me, that's where the relationship building was. It's hard when you have to do other things and not get out and do your, go out, walk a job site and say, okay, I think I can vision this kind of system's going to go in here, and I would propose the type of system, and that's kind of fun. That's the engineer in me right there. So, yeah.
Love it. Speaking of the sales side and of the growth that you said, right? Started at, it was about 20 million. By the time you left, it was 120 million. I mean, that's a big shift, and I'm curious how you were able to grow like that. And maybe let's take it from like a sales perspective. So were you introducing like new products and services? Were you entering new markets? Like what exactly was kind of the growth tactic?
Well, we had probably a couple things, and you hit on a couple of them, but one of them would be that. So I was in the generation of, there was like 5 of us partners at the company, and we kind of had when you're at a partner level is when you start selling at our company. And what we did is started bringing in younger partners. So by bringing in younger partners, we started expanding the partnership a little bit and bringing in more salespeople. So we increased the number of salespeople. There was plenty of work in the Bay Area for us to expand there. But I think we also did start to pick up some new markets a little bit. I mean, we did definitely, we're very careful not to have all of our eggs in one basket. We did have an excellent reputation for design build. So we would be, particularly in life sciences and in certain areas, but we also said, hey, we've got to try other things too. We've got to be, because if one industry goes slow, we better be able to, be able to survive that. So we were doing some schools. We would do design build on schools. We did some data centers. We did some high tech type work. And even to a point where I think I did a couple high-rise residential, which is very unusual for us to do that. So learning to branch out a little bit, and then we also picked up plumbing, which we had been doing piping, but not plumbing. We had controls, and we were expanding that. So we did go into some new markets, but each time we did that, we tried to do it like one step at a time. So let's not take 5 plumbing jobs. Let's take 1 plumbing job and learn how to do plumbing and grow that way. And we tried to grow it from inside most of the time. We didn't go out and buy companies or anything. So
I love that. Okay. So, you think about a new service you might want to offer, you dabble in it, you test it, you sort of perfect it, and then you really add that to your suite of services. Same
yes,
thing,
yeah,
same thing it sounds like with the customer segments. It's like, all right, you know what? Let's maybe do a school, see if that works. And then once it works, let's build out all the marketing materials and whatever
right.
our processes need to be around schools. And now we'll build the school relationships. And okay.
And even our clients. I mean, there will be. We would say there's a lot of general contractors we didn't work with. Well, if we wanted to try working with a new general contractor, let's do one job with them and see whether we can work together. Because sometimes, there are clients that you don't work with as well as other, that have a different philosophy than your company. So we would learn that as well with clients, and we would start to expand. And as the young partners came up, we kind of challenged them to go find some new clients. So then they would go out to look for the general contractors we don't do a lot of work with, or the architects that different architects that maybe we can get in and design build with them. So that's how you kind of grow. You start to get a little bit outside your comfort zone. But I do know it. I do remember talking to my younger partner who wanted to sell more plumbing work, and we kept saying, let's do it slow, and he jumped in right away. And yeah, we probably took a little too bleeding edge for us at that point, I'm afraid, but we survived. So
That's awesome. Were you ever a equity owner in the company?
yeah, no, we're a private company, and I definitely we have a fairly equal partnership. So at one point, the most I ever owned was probably 20%, but because we have equal partnership. But yes, I was definitely an equity owner, and that's the part that I was an owner before I was president. So I was a vice president and owner and things, but then eventually I became president. We did get a CEO at the very end when I was still there, but the last couple of years before I left, we wanted to put the next president in that seat and feel like I was still there. I was actually national president of SMACNA at that time, and we kind of knew I was going to be busy with that. So I became CEO. And then the pandemic hit. So it was kind of nice that I was still around because I was able to help us get through that pandemic and things. So we currently don't have a CEO anymore. After I retired, they just have a president again. So
Okay. And so when you retired, was it like the new partners bought out your stake, or did you sell the stake back to the company? How does that work?
yeah, we have a succession plan, and I had actually started 5 years prior. So every year I sold a fifth of my, even while I was still there, I sold a fifth of my stock, and that helps the next generation buying in so that they get a little more stock when I sell out, and the stock just kind of goes back to a pool, and then they buy in. So we have been a company that is unusual in our industry. We've had a succession plan since the time I joined the company, and we've really worked on. We understand that it takes a long time to develop a new partner and people that are managing the company. So we start when we target somebody, they've been there 3 or 4 years, we start targeting them, and we grow them in the company. So it's unusual most contractors don't have a very robust succession plan, and Western Allied was always good about that. And our founding partners did that back in they set it up back in the 60s, and that's how they did it. And it's not there's no family within it. We have that rule where we don't have any nepotism. But I mean, that's important because you need to have a way to retire. I retired out pretty early. I mean, I was only 57 when I retired. So, but just because I'm doing other things now, so I'm failing at retirement actually.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's maybe talk about some of those things. So you've been mentioning SMACNA. You were the first female national president of SMACNA. So in general, I would assume you are pro association, right? So like, why should construction companies be a part of an association like SMACNA?
Well, particularly union construction companies should be, because like I said, one of the things is SMACNA, a local SMACNA area will put your sheet metal contractors together, and also mechanical contractors together for MCA, and we will get together to negotiate with our partner, the union. So SMART is the sheet metal and rapid transit union. We would get together so that we as contractors have a more powerful negotiating with our partner if we put all of us together. So that's one step. But then the associations have been just so beneficial in helping us learn about our industry. They provide standards, plus they provide safety information and a ton of educational information, and then they're there to help us. So I guess when I joined the local area early on, so probably back in 96 or 7, I became our rep for SMACNA. I just learned so much from it. A lot of the leadership classes I got, and a lot of the financial boot camps and business management university. There's just so many good classes that SMACNA offered. And then back in 2008, I was our Bay Area SMACNA president. So that was the first time they'd had a woman in that position. National SMACNA asked me to join the board, the national board. And I said yes, and didn't realize that in 65 years of national SMACNA, they had never had a woman on their board, which I thought, I'm like, and then I found out that a lot of companies were family-owned businesses. So I kind of wondered where all the women were in the families, because I know there's women in families because they're the ones that have the kids. Right. So, but it was a good experience, those 4 years. And then I got off of the board, and they asked me if I would consider going to the chairs. And at the time I had kids that were still in high school, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But eventually, 4 or 5 years later, I kind of gave in, and my husband was backing it. So I said I would go through the chairs, and I'm really glad I did. But it is a bit of work, because you do travel a lot that last year when you're president. Mm-hmm. And there's about 1,800 contractors within SMACNA, and they really want you to get around. And particularly me being the first woman ever in the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades, none of the associations has ever had a woman as president. So it was a big deal for me to be there, and they wanted me to travel. Well, then COVID hit. So I ended up being a 2-year president, because I had the COVID year and the year after. And I did a lot of virtual travel for a while. So.
Got it. Were there, I think about just being in that role as like the president of an association. Is it, and you mentioned traveling a lot. So what exactly is the job? Is it just kind of like relationship maintenance, or are you like pushing certain initiatives, or what exactly is it?
There's a CEO for SMACNA. So there is a CEO that runs it, and there's an organization underneath. He has a lot of employees underneath that help us. There's executive directors for labor and technical and education and safety. So there's a lot of people working underneath the CEO. Really, really technically our job as president, we're really more the relationship building, appearance person, but we would pick what we want to talk about that year, or what's important to SMACNA. But we also were important to, the union wants to talk to contractors. I mean, they don't really want to talk to the association people. So I built a really great relationship prior to going into president, a couple of years prior to that, with the international president for the union, and Joe Sellers at the time. And he and I became very, very close, and a good relationship. And so part of that is, on the national level, you really want the relationship between the union and the contractors solid. And so I really, though, we're there really just to be a good salesperson for the association. I don't know if salesperson is the right word, but representative of the association. You're only in it normally you're only in it for a year. So it's the CEO that's a consistent one. We're, as president, are just kind of the figurehead for the year. So, but it's a busy year. So you're going around just kind of talking to chapters about what SMACNA is working on, and you're just being the PR person. So.
Okay. Gotcha. Let's shift to, kind of thinking about the industry as a whole, and maybe some trends. And I mean, one of them, so we've been sort of talking a lot about the idea that there are not many women in the trades, in the construction field. Is that changing at all? Do you see that changing? What do you think about that?
It's interesting. It is changing, but it's taken a very long time. I mean, if you look back when they really were focusing on it back in the 90s, we really didn't make hardly any progress. And so, but recently we seem to have been making some progress. We run about somewhere between 9 and 10% of women in the entire construction industry, and that's it. But in the trades, even less than that. But supposedly we're up to close to 6% now. So I do think that we'll get more women in as the next generation is involved in both leadership and the trades, and because the next generation, I think, is a lot more of an inclusive generation than my baby boomer generation. I don't think we were as inclusive, and it's a kind of story where, if you're, my dad was an engineer and I was an engineer, and he wouldn't have stopped me to do anything. But so many times you talk to people and they would say, I would never let my daughter be in construction. I'm like, you would never let your daughter be in. What if your daughter wants to be in construction? So, but I mean, I think I was a bit of a unicorn in that running a big company like that too. You didn't find many women, particularly from the sort of the industry in the 80s, running a large company like I did. But you're starting to see more women do it now. So I'm happy to see that. And I'd like it to be where it's more the norm than it. And we have, our women in construction groups are very strong throughout the nation, and we need to support each other, because when you're only 10% of the industry, you don't see yourself a lot out there. So as long as, somebody asked me, well, when are you going to stop having women in construction groups? And I said, when we're 40% of the industry, no, we don't need them anymore, because at least we see each other out there a lot. So, but yeah, we're trying. I mean, women are trying. They really are pushing to get in, and it's a great industry. So,
yeah. What about, I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about there being a labor shortage in the space. There's been talk of that for decades now. It feels like, I hear a lot about, the fact that at a certain point in schools, like shop class was removed from schools. And so it's just like fewer people have, the ability to even like experiment with this kind of stuff as they're growing up. Then I've read that and I've actually experienced this. There's sort of I guess people think of like going to a normal college, not a trade school. They think of going to like a 4-year college as like makes you really smart. And if you go into trades, then you're like not as smart.
right.
And I think that has turned a lot of people away. Are you seeing a shift in that at all at this point?
Yeah, I actually am. I'm excited about that because I'm starting to see a shift in it. So I'll kind of share with you how my path went on that. And as I was starting to get closer to being president, every time I would visit any contractor, or we talk to anybody around the nation, we hear that we're all started getting worried because our average age of our union sheet metal and pipe fitters were somewhere in the range of in the mid 40s, which meant that 50% of those people, mostly guys, but those people in the trades were all going to be retiring in the next 10 years, because most of them can retire at 55. And that was scary because we had a lot of intelligence in that, but we also didn't have nearly as many people coming in. So, and then particularly the year when I was president and I did virtual visits, everybody was worried about that. And so we all talked about it. Now I decided that summer of 2020, or late part of the summer, my partner and I were talking about his son and how he's not meant for college, but he knows that he has an opportunity in the trades, but how he has a lot of friends that don't know anything about it because they don't have shops and schools in California anymore. So I said to and we were right up next to East Palo Alto, which in California, East Palo Alto is a very underserved area compared to very wealthy Palo Alto. And I said to my partner, I said, why don't Western Allied have a summer camp and next summer in 21 and teach some of the East Palo Alto kids about getting into the trades? And he's like, that's a great idea, but I don't have time. And I said, well, I do, so I'll make it. So I wrote up a business plan and I presented to my partners, and to their credit, they all said, yeah, let's do it. So I shared that vision on a virtual convention we had for SmackDown when I was president, on a roundtable that was about workforce development. I said, hey, on the roundtable, I said, hey, we all got to try to do something. I'm going to run a summer camp next summer. So my friend up in Seattle, Rick Hermanson, called me up immediately afterwards and said, can I do it with you? So the two of us, our two companies, formed together, and we named our nonprofit Heavy Metal Summer Experience. And we designed a summer camp and just kind of came up with permission slips and what we needed to do and projects that we were going to make. And our teams, our shop personnel helped us with what are we going to have the kids do. And that first summer in 21, we had 2 camps and 28 kids. And it was such a great summer. And I love telling the story that summer, though. When at graduation, a mom came up to us and said, "Can we talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." So she pulls me aside and she says, "I'm a housekeeper and my husband's a framer. And my daughter Alejandra was in a really dark place her last semester of senior year in high school. She knew she didn't want to go to college. It wasn't meant for her. And she didn't know what she wanted to do." She said, she got really depressed. She goes, "I lost my daughter." And the mom started crying. She said, "It was really hard. I didn't know what to do." And she goes, "Now, 6 weeks later, after your camp, I have my daughter back because she knows what she wants to do with her life." And she's going into her 4th year of apprenticeship right now, and she's just kicking butt. So that kind of cooked me and said, we need to share this, because besides the need of the trades, if we can save kids as well, it's a great thing. And I can tell there's a need, and that all of a sudden things are starting to change, because we are going into our 5th summer of heavy metal, that first summer being 2 camps and 28 kids. And this summer, we're going to have 55 locations across the United States and Canada and 900 kids. So
wow.
our growth has doubled almost every year, and it's showing that, and it's working. We're getting those kids into the trades. But your point about we don't explain what a great job a career in the trades is, and how, I can guarantee you my field personnel, like my superintendents, my 4 people, they were more intelligent than half of the people I had working they are smart people. Just because they didn't go to college doesn't mean they're not smart. It means that they were smarter, and that they were getting paid to work while they were getting free training. And then, so many of my employees had houses well before the college people did, because they had no debt. So,
Exactly.
it's starting to change. I'm seeing it change. We're getting more people into the apprenticeship. But the average age entering the apprenticeship is about 27 years old. So it obviously means that we still need to do a better job with the parents and the kids and the counselors. So I think we need to work on that, change the perception of construction.
Yeah. I have definitely read that a lot of Gen Z is starting to seriously consider and starting to enter the trades. Just, you mentioned the debt, really just because they're looking at the financial obligations of both paths. And they're like, okay, one path, I don't have to spend any money and I start making money immediately. And the other path, I have to go get a $200,000 loan to go to college. I mean, it's gotten to be too crazy. And now the incentive financially is absolutely to go into the trades, which is pretty cool.
And you know what, Nico, technology has finally really hit construction too. So that to me is an exciting time. I mean, I'm kind of glad I'm retired from it, because I'm not sure I can keep up with it, but I'm very excited, and especially for our next generation, about how much construction's finally adopting technology. And that will help our next generation too, because they're the kids that were born with their phones in their hand, and they've seen a screen from the time they were a baby. So now they realize that we have a ton of technology within construction. We use robotics, we use virtual reality, we use virtual headsets. Everything we do is using technology nowadays. So when I share that with the high schoolers, they're actually much more interested. Well, that and fire. They like welding and fire. The kids seem like that's what they want to do. So in our camps, we learned we have to do welding, or they're not going to, they like that a lot. So between technology and fire. So
got it.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, you keep saying you're retired. I hate to break it to you, but you're actually not retired. It sounds like you're scaling a new business. It just happens to be a nonprofit business.
Yeah.
What is the scaling tactic for this one? Are you physically going to the locations? Are they sort of like franchise locations? How is that working?
Yeah, no, we don't actually run the camps. We look for host sites. So we look for either mechanical contractors or electrical contractors or full MEP contractors, or union training centers to host the sites. We mostly work with the union, because I am supported by the union. And non-union's fine too. It's just that my organization is focused on that, because with the union, they get free training and they've got great benefits. But so we do look for hosts. And so I have 55 locations that are hosting camps for me. I provide the camps. The kids get a set of Red Wing boots the day they walk into the first day. They get their new boots, and they got brand new boots, which is wonderful. We provide those for them. We provide medal for graduation, some T-shirts and banners. And because of my great partnership with Milwaukee Tool and DeWalt, we give each kid a tool bag when they graduate. So they take home a tool bag of Milwaukee or DeWalt tools. And so those things have really, with what we provide, plus we provide the playbook, which is a big part of what our number one resource is, all of our new projects. And every year we've gotten more and more projects in the playbook, and we've scaled that up. So with scaling up wise, we redid our website a while ago, and the host camps have a login, so they go right to our resources, and we have liaisons that help them. It is mostly me, but I do have an executive assistant and some really kick-ass liaisons. So, guys that are really good at that. But I need to hire an executive director, but I need to have enough funds to do that. So I'm working on both grant writing and things like that. So it is growing way faster than I ever expected. I would never have imagined this would have happened. So, and the part that we're all over the country. I mean, we are in all the way as far as Connecticut, Rhode Island, as well as we're in Canada in 4 locations. So it's obvious that it's needed. And that the other thing I will say is that the companies really appreciate it when they do it, because their employees want to give back. I mean, particularly their employees that are the younger generation. That's important to that generation, is to do community work, to give back. And once somebody runs a camp, they almost always run a camp again. We pretty much, that's my problem. I'm going to have 55 to start with the following summer, and then we're going to get new companies. So it just keeps growing, which is great. And I am not retired anymore.
Well, I think it's amazing. I mean, I've been worked for and with many companies, and at a certain point they're all looking for some sort of way to give back, or be a part of some sort of charity. It really builds and improves the culture of their company. And I don't think I could think of a better way for construction and trades companies to get involved and give back than running a summer camp. It's also a fun way to do it. It sounds like. So
it is, and they see the light in the kids' eyes. I mean, I tell the story about a lady that was a purchasing lady who had just started at Western Allied, and she'd been in the industry for a while. And the first summer, she didn't think she was qualified to help, so we would sign up volunteers on the volunteer sheet. So we would have the union instructors be there and instructing, but we'd always have a couple extra adult volunteers to keep an eye on the kids. So we always try to have kind of a 2-to-1 adult, two kids to 1 adult. So we keep an eye on them. And she didn't volunteer that first year. And the second year, the young man running the camp for me convinced her that she was qualified to volunteer. And she said, okay. And so she volunteered. She called me on her way home that night, and she said, Angie, I've never had a better day at work than today. She goes, this was the best day of work I've ever had, ever. She goes, watching those kids and seeing what they were doing and seeing how excited they were. She said, it made my day, and now I want to volunteer a bunch more times. So it is important. I mean, I think it is important to give back and to see how you're helping people. And we're trying to tracking the kids to get who gets into the construction is a little tough, because a lot of the high schoolers are going back to high school. Some of them have graduated. And what we did last summer, it's a summer of 23 when we were done. We managed to find the numbers. So of the kids that had graduated high school and were over 18, we got about almost 70% of them into the construction jobs. So so we had a lot of interest. And I mean, and that's why I'm really focused on the MEP trades, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing trades, because that's kind of the skilled trades that we're focused on. I've also gotten called by, concrete and underground contractors. And I said, you could do a camp too. You just maybe aren't a heavy metal one, but you could come up with your own projects. I was talking to a concrete guy and said, find an underserved home where they need a new driveway and have the kids design the driveway, demo the driveway, form it, order the material, and pour it. And that would be a great summer camp. And you could do a driveway in a week. And he kind of thought, well, that's not a bad idea. So again, I just challenge him to say, stop complaining about workforce and that you don't have enough people. Do something about it. And that's where I'm kind of like, come on, get some skin in the game. So
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So for people who do want to do something about it, businesses out there who want to host a camp, want to get involved, what's the best way for them to get in touch, or where can they find you?
Yeah, we have a website. So our name is Heavy Metal Summer Experience. Our website is hmse.org. So heavymetalsummerexperience.org, but it's hmse.org. And go to our website. And currently my email's on there, or info@hmse is me as well. So I pretty much get anything that comes our way comes to me, and just reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And I'm also, and if you not able to run a camp, but you want to support, I'm very excited. I just got my first general contractor as a major donor, Whiting Turner. So, we do need donors to help. It costs us about $2,000 per student to have them in camp. half of that is the camp that's hosting, and half of it's a heavy metal summer experience. And the hosting camps are starting to fundraise from vendors, and so I'm also looking for national sponsors as well. So either one, it's a good cause, and if you're looking to help, we're always there. And if you have a high schooler, or you know of a high schooler and there's a camp in your area, look at our website. We have all the locations. Most of them are just opening applications right now. So if you go to, let's say you go to Michigan and you look at Michigan and you live near that spot where that camp is, they're opening their application. The online application for the students will be on the website at that location for the Michigan camp. And so they can apply for that. So if you're in the high school, preferably 16 to 18, the last couple of years of high school. So
okay, awesome,
yeah.
Sweet. Well, we will link to the website
Okay.
in the show notes for sure. And Angie, thank you so much for educating me and for joining me in the Lion's Den.
Nico, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And again, don't be afraid to try something. Do anything will help, and don't be afraid. I just think that it's time for us to all get some skin in the game. So,
amen. Get out there and do it. All right.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Angie.